Ladies and gentlemen, today I have the pleasure to welcome Miss Alison Grace Koehler. She's a stained glass artist and poet who is based in Paris. And today I am welcoming her so she can tell us a little bit about her work and her journey as an American artist living in France. Miss Alison, thank you very much for joining me under the Human Rights Tree.
Thank you, Alpha, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here talking with you today.
You are welcome. So, how's life in Paris?
Well, life in Paris, you know, I still feel lucky to be here. While at the same time, I grew up in Chicago. I grew up in Rogers Park,
Okay.
and I still love. I love Chicago too. Paris, I think that was a great place to be a working artist. Not that other cities aren't, but I think that Paris and France there's a different infrastructure that is more accommodating to artists in general.
Okay.
I was able to go back to school here for stained glass, and I was able to go to school here for almost for free, to study stained glass. And yeah, there's just, the system is different. I declare my taxes as an artist. I mean, that that isn't necessary to be legitimate, but I just
Helpful.
mean that there are just more institutions that kind of like this is this is a profession. It's accepted as that. And um I feel like, yeah, there's a different kind of respect that's more general, that's wider.
Mhm. But when you come to your artistic journey, can you tell us when did it begin?
Hmm. Well, I guess I have always enjoyed drawing and painting, um, from, as a child. Um, my dad's a writer, and so I grew up, you know, with a lot of books and also thinking about writing, thinking about having a voice. That was definitely something that he really cared about instilling in me. Not that he wanted me to be an artist necessarily or anything specific, but from a young age, he really kind of cared about showing me that, that everyone has a voice. And he would kind of push back when I showed him, essays I wrote as a kid, or if he felt like I wasn't saying anything or wasn't reaching to say something. So I think that was, I guess, challenging as a kid, but also a huge gift. And also, I mean, there's just so many cultural things in Chicago. I think I was lucky to kind of grow up kind of exposed to a lot of things happening in the neighborhood and around the city, in different arts. Also, my grandmother volunteered at the Art Institute, so I got to go there. And yeah, I guess also my I lost my mother at a somewhat young age, and I think having, I always had an interest in writing and art, but I think kind of from a young age too, it became a thing that I did just to work through feelings, and it became really important to me as just to practice that as a way of kind of moving through the day and moving through emotions and experiences.
As you indicated, you you were you were born in Roses Park. Um, can you tell us a little bit about Roses Park? Um, has a neighborhood in the Chicago North Side area. How did Roses Park influence your work as an
Ah,
artist?
Well, so I mean, I think Rogers Park is a really kind of unique neighborhood in the city of Chicago. I know that it's like historically one of the most diverse in terms of like, you know, there are a lot of people from a lot of different countries that have lived in Rogers Park, even at times when Chicago was even more segregated than today. So historically, there are just a lot of people from a lot of different places in in the neighborhood. Also with socioeconomically quite mixed. And I think it was really cool to grow up around so many different people with you know different backgrounds, different lived experiences, and also some things shared. Um, I Yeah, I guess it's also a neighborhood where there are lots of former current hippies. Both of my parents were definitely definitely
Hippies.
hippies and moved to Chicago in I guess in the 70s. They moved to neither of them were born in Chicago, but lived, you know, a large part of their adult lives there.
Mm,
Um, and actually, maybe my mom moved to Chicago perhaps a little bit earlier. But yeah, so I feel like there is this kind of, yeah, definitely a spirit of activism, also openness to different kinds of people, um, and I feel like that, yeah, I feel like that stayed with me. And also just with my dad, you know, we would sometimes walk around the neighborhood and like look for like interesting pieces of garbage that we would kind of turn into like collages later. And so the neighborhood was actually present in you know, in art making from childhood
mm.
as well.
Do you feel like when you were going to school, uh, the, they your teachers was encouraging you in your artistic endeavor? Do you feel like that thing was
Um,
happening?
yeah, I would say I would say so. And so I mean I guess I changed schools a number of times when I was growing up.
Mm,
Um, I did go to I got into Franklin Fine Arts, which is a magnet school, a public school. So, you know, there was access to a lot of arts programming at like the elementary school level. Um, and yeah, I remember some teachers. I mean, I remember an art teacher in high school really encouraging me, and in college. Um, I'm trying to remember at a younger age, sort of when that if I was especially encouraged as an artist. I mean, um, I think maybe I got more encouragement kind of from the home in that respect. Um, yeah, and I think
You,
I kind
you
of
don't
had
mind
actually.
sharing how at home you were encouraged to be an artist? Mm,
Well, I mean, I you know, I guess I always had lots of arts and crafts. Um, my parents actually, when I was like a little baby, they let me draw on the walls.
Oh,
Um, I mean, that's just, you know, a kid being a kid, but they're
yeah.
like, all right. They also for at one point we had
Mm.
this like really old used car that was kind of not in great shape. And at one point, I like started drawing on the seats, and they let me. So I mean, this is, I guess I had that. Yeah,
No
maybe there wasn't
reprimand,
a lot of discipline.
no
I mean, maybe
discipline.
there was some. I remember it being like it was allowed.
Mm,
And I guess even in high school, I remember I kind of made like collages on my wall, and um, yeah, it was okay. It was okay in a way that probably in most homes that would not be
appointed.
accepted, but in mine it was all right. I don't know. I can't remember being like yelled at for doing that, but it was just like, okay, yeah, it was okay. Um, I mean,
Will
that
you
was one
ever be
way.
tempted to follow another path beside the artistic path? because often
Mm.
in our society, artist or artistic work is not viewed as a secure profession. Were you ever tempted to say, look, I love art, I would love to do it, but I need to find a backup, like they say. Were you in that situation, or you
Well,
always, your parents and you always want follow uh, the profession of your heart?
um, yeah, great question. I was not like from childhood on certain that I would be a professional artist.
Mm,
I knew that it was always something that I liked doing. And I guess in high school, I did do like the International Baccalaureate program in a public high school in the city. And so I did go on to a liberal arts college. So in the States, I did, and that was McAllister over in Twin Cities. And um, going through high school and into college, I kept drawing and painting. I also did like the Gallery 37 and Marwin
mm,
at different times in high school. And I knew I loved it, but I also thought, okay, I wasn't sure that that was my eventual future necessarily, or my professional future. So in college, I was definitely taking a lot of different kinds of classes. I was interested in psychology as well, and at one point, I thought that that might be what I would do. I mean, I definitely explored other majors and classes. I was interested in a lot of different subjects, but even in the liberal arts college, I realized that like I really wanted to be in the studio painting most of all, even though I did enjoy writing papers and learning about different things. Um, Something felt, I don't know, I mean, that's again, one can choose a major in college and then continue in many different directions, of course, as
mm,
well. But I remember that moment of like choosing, okay, what is, and I just sort of, it just was clear that making art is what I most wanted to do. And so I sort of decided, okay, well, you know, I'll just keep going with it. And I guess there have been moments where it's like I've had to, okay, this is still what I want to be doing. I'll just keep going with it. And I feel like sticking to it is probably, I mean, there's of course, well, there's talent and there's work and um, but like just continuing in it and
mm.
like just not letting go of that. I don't know. I feel like that is how artists stay in it. I mean, maybe that's not really, I don't know if that's clear enough, but
Yeah, I
yeah.
think it's clear. You just follow what you love, um, and were able to basically assume your responsibility, whatever
Yeah.
happened. When you come to college, where did you go to
Mhm.
college, and how was the process of going to college? You know,
I went to McAllister College, which is in St. Paul, Minnesota.
okay.
And yeah, it was a liberal arts college. I was able to get some scholarship money from them as well. And I like that they were in a big city. I mean, well, St. Paul, the Twin Cities. I like that it was, a liberal arts campus in a large city, and also that they, were a rare college to actually give like financial aid to a lot of international students. And so there was a big, yeah, international student community at McAllister. And for a college that was not so large, it was just, there were also a lot of people from a lot of different places. And I guess I liked that about it. And that process. So I actually, I mean, visited different colleges with my dad, and I ended up applying there early. I just sort of decided that I'm not, it's not always easy for me to make decisions. Like I sometimes I do like to keep open worlds of possibilities, but that was one instance in my life where I decided it felt like the right fit for me at that moment in time. And they, I got in, and so I just sort of left it there and went to college
Mm.
there in
Why
Twin Cities.
that school was part of your choice? As an artist, we know that there is a great school like the Art Institute of Chicago school, and but you decided that you're going to go to Minnesota. Is it in Minnesota? Yeah,
Yeah,
you.
it
What made
is.
that school um, more appealing to you? Mm,
You know, I think at that time I wanted to I wanted to leave the city and
mm,
kind of experience life in a different environment.
I
And
see.
Minnesota is not so far, but I actually didn't really look into staying in Chicago, even though now it's sort of, I don't know, now I might do it differently. But at that
Mm,
time I felt maybe it was sort of movement to, I guess towards sort of a different kind of freedom or autonomy.
mm,
Um, and yeah, there were things I liked about the school itself.
I see.
And yeah, maybe I just sort of wanted space to kind of figure out what I was doing next, kind of in a more independent way, too.
I see. So, how was your experience in campus, going through those 4 years and trying to obtain a degree? And uh, um, was it a learning experience, or there was many challenges? How was it going to school? Mm,
Well, I mean, I guess it was a while ago now.
mm,
But there were some challenges for sure, but I think that going through like the International Baccalaureate program in high school, um, I think I was maybe prepared for the workload, and I don't remember being too overwhelmed by it. I think there, and yeah, maybe there was a way in which there was in high school, there was a lot of pressure. And in college, it wasn't easier at all, but there was just sort of, there was a different kind of freedom, and there's a different way of kind of navigating one's own time and fewer classes per day. And I think I think I mostly enjoyed that, and kind of connecting with new people. Um, and also, I mean, I did, maybe had I not chosen studio art as my focus, I think that academics would have become more rigorous. I think maybe I did choose something that was, I mean, I spent a lot of time in the studio, but maybe that, I don't know, maybe it wasn't demanding the same way. I felt like I really had, I just, I felt it was what I wanted to do. And so I was in the studio working quite regularly, and managing my other classes, and then, some student work and etc. But looking back now, I don't remember it being like the hardest moment in life in terms of what, the things have, I mean, I think that there are definitely challenges, but it's also kind of an amazing environment where there's just time and space to create and to think and to connect. And I think I really enjoyed that overall, and have also, I mean, reconnected with other people who went to the same school. I mean, there are people I've stayed in touch with, of course, and there are people that like are kind of part of that community who found me in France. And I feel like I've met a lot of other people who went to that school, who kind of gone on to do interesting things
mm,
in their future, all different kinds of things.
I see.
Um,
Did you often going to school is a experience where you connect with people, and also is a journey where you meet uh, a teacher that impact your future work. Did you have such a teacher who really push you to be the person you are today?
hmm, oops.
Mm. Yes.
Excuse me. Can you
Okay.
hear me okay? Okay.
Yes. Mm.
Um, so I did have I guess I had a writing, like an English teacher. So I was studying studio art and English. Um, in college, and I had one English teacher really who seemed to recognize sort of some talent in my writing, or who was encouraging in my writing. And it was also, I guess I took, I think, a few classes with him. Um, Also some critical theory, which was more challenging to me at the time. But he left space to there was some space to like write more creative pieces for our papers. And I really enjoyed the work, and I also felt seen in that, as a thinker, even though I think I was more shy in class. And yeah, probably more nervous about having a deep enough understanding of the material itself, to kind of voice my questions or um, my impressions out loud you know, as easily as some of the other students. But I think I took a lot of time with the writing in that class. And had I ended up, going further maybe in the academic world, I don't know, that might have been an opening. But that was in terms of like the writing. I remember that teacher, even though it wasn't a creative writing class, but I remember um, yeah, I don't know, it was important
I
for
see.
me.
Did you have the chance to graduate? And if yes, what was your major?
So I did graduate. My major was studio art.
Okay,
That was, yeah, studio art, and I had a minor in English.
I see. Af-
And
Go
and
ahead.
yeah,
Go ahead.
oh no, 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 it's just interesting that, yeah, I
Mm,
mean, I guess I still very much doing both of those things.
I see.
Yeah,
After
years
your
later.
graduation, did you come back to Chicago, or you decided to try another, or you stayed? What? How was your experience after graduation? Your
So,
graduation.
so after my graduation, I moved to Denmark for 1 year,
Oh, okay.
because the summer before that, I had met an artist sort of by chance, during a trip with my father
Mm,
in New Mexico. And this artist, a German artist who was living in Denmark, who was kind of splitting her time between Copenhagen and Santa Fe. I met her at an art fair, and and I ended up buying one of her prints. And I also, at the time, I was just thinking about, I was just a student. I didn't have a lot of money, but I wanted to I kind of believed in, like, supporting artists already.
yeah. Mm,
And she was kind of touched that someone, some young person had one of her prints, and we chatted. And she's like, "Oh, if you want, come visit me, and you come to my workshop in Copenhagen, and if you want
okay.
someday." And so I just decided. I mean, I don't know. It's like it's Yes, I do have a more adventurous side. I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. It was like I made that my plan, and I actually applied for a visa that
Mm.
ended up getting rejected. And I
Oh,
didn't have a
why?
plan B.
Why?
Well, I didn't really even know. I think I went about it in the way that, yeah, maybe not. I could have gone to like ask for help at the college, but I was kind of just like winging it on my own. And so I think I applied for a work visa,
Oh,
which
okay.
is actually hard to come by. I mean, it's more hard to come by. I think I could have applied for a different kind of visa and maybe just
Mm,
gotten paid under the table or something. But I applied for a work visa, and I think I got the rejection like right after my graduation.
okay.
And I had the money saved up for the ticket, and I was like, I wrote to the artist. I was like, "Well, can I still come?" She's like, "Okay, yeah, you can still come." And so I
Mm,
just got a ticket and flew out there. So I only had a tourist visa for 3 months, but I was able to stay in like the basement of her gallery studio,
okay.
and they were kind of gave me room and board.
Mm,
And I was able to do that for a couple months. And then I found like in her studio, I learned how to cut glass, and because she made frames for her own work and also for other artists or other people, and I learned to cut glass, and then I got a job in a framing shop in Copenhagen,
Okay.
and I kind of explained my situation. They're like, okay, well, we'll apply for another visa for you. We'll
Mm.
see. And I mean, it's just one of these moments in life where things just kind of like
Yeah.
people are trusting, and I don't know. It worked out, even though in the end I never got the other visa, but I was able to stay and kind of work there for them for
Mm.
almost a whole year. But I was
Yeah.
like, it was one of these moments where I wasn't really going by the books, and I probably could have gotten in trouble for it. And but in the end, I took that risk, and it was a moment when
Yeah. I
I just
think
wanted to see what happens. Yeah.
your story exemplify the idea that you just have to have the courage to share your wish and let the universe work on them. Because sometimes,
Mm,
often we believe we are in control, but your example, you apply for work visa, it was rejected. You end up going as a tourist, and you end up
hmm.
having having a job, in
Yeah,
in other way.
you're right.
Can you just tell us, when was it, which year, and how
Okay, yeah. So
was
this
your
was
experience as a young American artist living in Copenhagen, in Denmark?
Yeah, so I mean, this was in 2008. So this was
Okay.
yeah. So this was
Yeah.
a long time ago. I guess I mean, not quite 20 years, but
Mm.
it's getting closer. So this
Mm.
was 2008 into 2009
Okay.
when I was there. So that was yeah,
So how was
yeah. I mean,
your experience as a
I mean,
American?
I really loved it, and I think so much so that I had I not lived that, I mean, maybe I wouldn't still be in Europe today, even though I was in Copenhagen first. It just
Mm.
things, no, I mean, the world, just so many things felt possible, even while, you know, there is still a lot of rejection. I mean, there is the visa was rejected, and like I feel like also being an artist is like so much of that is weathering rejection and like being able to kind of stay in it and like
Mm.
not that it ever, I don't know if it ever even gets easier, but maybe a little bit. But I feel like being able to like, okay, that's just that's in some ways part of the work. But I don't know. I mean, I met some really wonderful people. I also ended up doing some work at the Copenhagen Post, which is again, it was like a long shot, but I was like, I'd really love to write about art. And so I contacted the Copenhagen Post. So it was like a free English language newspaper, and maybe one other magazine. And I just wrote to them. I was like, are you looking for people to write about cultural events? And they're like, yeah, we're open to accepting new writers. We'll give you one project. And if we like what you've done, we'll just put you on the roster.
Mm.
And so yeah, I wrote, gosh, what was it? It was like some adaptation of like Romeo and Juliet, I think,
Okay.
like, and about, a Jewish person and um, an Arab. I forget the exact
Mm.
story, but I, wrote about this play, um, and then I was just sort of on the roster to write about cultural events. And
Okay.
so sometimes they would reach out to me if they needed someone to cover a story. Otherwise, like all of the writers just got a list of the things that were covered every month. And so I was writing probably on average like a cultural review a week, which again, like all this, yeah, but kind of daring to like reach out. And again, I would say this was a moment in my life where I really I was just in it and I was trying um and I guess the universe was answering in the ways that you were saying. And
I
I
see.
would say that throughout my life I've tried to do that, but there also have been periods where I don't feel like I've done that as well or as thoroughly, or there are definitely moments where I'm expecting the universe to answer, and there's silence. So but Copenhagen was, yeah, it was definitely a life-changing
How was
experience.
the Danish culture? Uh, how did you, what was the interaction between you as an American? Do you speak Danish at that time, or you don't have to when you live in
No,
Denmark, or you have to learn
no,
the language? Mm.
um, no. So everyone spoke English extremely well.
Okay.
So I really did not have to learn the language, although I would say I learned, I mean, this was over a decade ago. This is a long time ago now. I mean, I
Mm.
think I still remember some words. I did learn some words and phrases. Pronunciation was quite challenging. I remember I lived on a street that I had a hard time pronouncing, like
Mm.
Chuhovai with one of like the O's with a little line through it. And
Okay.
so even just like if I um but there was somewhere like Kunst, which means art, Hammer, which is frame. Some of that I guess is close to German. I mean, there's still a handful of words that I remember. Hildeblumst, which is elderberry. I remember they always had these like elderberry
Mm.
flavored everything. So I did not really learn the language, but I learned some vocabulary.
So,
Yeah.
how was the artistic scene, art scene in Copenhagen? And is it a diverse city also?
Um, so again, I mean, I haven't been there in a while, but
Mm.
I mean, they have a really strong culture of like design, and I did meet some people kind of in different realms of art and music and in theater and dance and in the visual arts. Um, I There was I guess kind of an artist. I got an artist studio at kind of like I don't even know if it was if it was like a squatted space, if it was officially there. It might have been kind of a temporary artist space that I was able to get like a little corner studio in at one point where I was painting at the time. So this was before I even did any stained glass. I was mostly doing like oil painting and drawing. Um, and In terms of the diversity of the city, I mean, interestingly, you know, Copenhagen is very close to Malmö in Sweden. And I would say Sweden is much more diverse than Denmark overall, and they're much more welcoming to immigrants from a lot of different places. And I would say that Denmark, like in terms of their social system, like there's a lot of like support for their citizens, but it's much more closed in terms of like their immigration policies. Again, I don't know, maybe things have evolved or changed in recent years, and I'm not as aware of what their current political climate is or what. But at the time, I remember there wasn't, I would say, less diversity than Chicago, less diversity than Paris. I mean, I would say like some immigrants from like North Africa. Um, but there were some neighborhoods where there was maybe more immigration,
I see.
but as a whole, I would say less diverse.
Mm.
But again, you could go across the bridge and then into Malmo in Sweden, and I guess a smaller city, I believe, but with more diversity. And some people would actually live in Sweden and work in Copenhagen. There was definitely like sort of channels between those two cities.
Did your stay in Denmark, in Copenhagen, Denmark, influence your work somehow as an artist?
Well, when I was working at the framing shop, um, I was learning to cut glass. Well, I learned to cut glass with the artist who is a lithographer primarily and a painter. And then in the other studio where I worked for close to a year, maybe more like 9 months, I was cutting glass for frames, and I actually became interested in the way that the glass would sometimes break. And at one point, I like kept a pile of glass, broken glass, and I was like, I'd like to do something with it. But in the end, I was like, I just didn't even know what I would do with it, and so I got rid of it. And then it was about a year. later that I ended up moving to France because I also met my ex-partner in Denmark, which was part of, why I ended up moving to France.
Okay.
And when I first moved to France, I was thinking I was trying to get work in framing shops, and I ended up kind of by chance walking past a studio of a painter, actually a Turkish painter and stained glass maker who'd been in Paris for many years, um, and I actually was attracted to his paintings first, but then I was like, oh, I went in and started talking with him, and he gave stained glass classes. And I was like, oh, this could be an interesting way to like learn how to work with these broken shards. And so I started taking classes from him, but it kind of started like with like the frame making and the cutting glass and like starting to work with that material in a more technical way. But it sort of opened something, a curiosity about the medium. It's like, oh, stained glass. I'll learn how to do that. It took some time then for me to move back to actually working primarily with broken shards. Um, I learned kind of more, traditional stained glass techniques from him, and then I went on to get a diplôme de métier d'art in a school in Paris. So I did some more formal training in that medium, and then it was after that that it started to feel a little bit more like painting to me, and I actually like in my studio today, um, I have boxes of colored shards of glass, and I kind of use each like colored piece almost like a paint, like a stroke of paint. Um, and so when I make a composition, it's almost like an impressionist style painting, where like the colored shards are like strokes of paint, and they kind of compose the piece in a more organic way, that is more painterly for me. But that was kind of, yeah, it took.
Basic, Basically, we can say that becoming a stained glass artist, uh, um, w- the beginning was in Denmark. If hearing
Hmm.
your story, you know. Um, so, how
Hmm.
long did you stay in Denmark, and uh, why did you decide to leave?
Well, I lived there for 1 year and
Okay.
I left because I got a second visa rejection.
Oh, I see. Mm,
And in the meantime, I was able amazingly, and I think that things might be different. I mean, this was, close to 20 years ago already. So, um, I think even with like, I think passport control has gotten more stringent in the last decades. Um, Maybe this would not even be as easy at the time. It's like, okay, you could leave the Schengen area for 3 months, come back, and it was like you're taking a risk, but it was a little bit relaxed. But when the the studio that was had hired me, once they got the rejection, they were like, okay, well, we can't really keep taking this risk. Um, and for me, it's like, okay, I didn't have a real visa to stay, essentially, which is why I went back, even though, but I also felt like, okay, it felt like a solid experience that was rich, but I kind of felt ready. But at the same time, I met someone and who
mm.
is French, and
Okay.
I still moved back to Chicago, but we kind of had this long distance relationship for a while before I eventually moved to France.
Mm. So you came back to Chicago. Mm.
Mhm.
How was the transition from Copenhagen to Chicago?
Well, um was it shocking? I
Mm,
think that I don't know, when you're traveling, I feel like when you're in a foreign country, I mean, I guess countries are so different
mm.
from each other, but I feel like yeah, some things were hard and it wasn't like everything just went smoothly by any means, but I was also amazed by like doors that opened when I tried to push them a little bit, like, like working at the Copenhagen Post. And I remember going back to Chicago, and I think I contacted various newspapers to like write cultural reviews, and no one really no
No
one was
opportunity.
interested.
I see.
no opportunity, and it was actually surprisingly more difficult. I think in Copenhagen it's like I was kind of an anomaly, like, and people were kind of curious about that, or that there was kind of maybe an openness that maybe if as a maybe not everyone. Moving back to Chicago, I didn't feel that. It was like it felt like, okay, it felt challenging, and which again, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I just felt like I was getting, like, doors were closing more than they were opening at
I
that
see.
moment in time. Yeah.
Eventually, you decided you want to go to France.
Yeah.
However, there have been many artists, American artists, who at certain time in their life decided to move to France. Were you um, were you basically into that idea France was the place for artists, so I will have to go? Was it, or you went because there was no opportunities in Chicago, so you decided you will move to France and continue your profession or continue your education? What was it? Mm.
Well, I think I was always interested in France.
Mm.
I mean, and I was dating someone who was French. So that was definitely one of the
One of
major
the
pushes.
reason.
Had that not happened, maybe my interest in the country wouldn't have been strong enough to go on my own. Maybe it would
Mm.
have,
Mm.
but that was kind of the extra push. I did study French in college and
Okay.
in high school. Like I spoke French again to some extent, as and I even had in college I had done like a study abroad program in X. So I had been to France already. I hadn't lived in Paris, but yeah, I was familiar with the language and the culture.
Mm.
In the south of France, I did a painting program there, and I really loved that as well. It's true, I
Mm.
didn't even think of that when you asked about teachers, but that was an amazing experience as well. The Marchutz School of Art that was connected to the American University in Aix-en-Provence,
Okay.
which um, so so it was not so yeah, that was there. And also, I mean, my mother had lived in France for 1 year when she was much younger, and I knew that maybe in some way that kind of, I don't know, there was kind of
There
this
was a
like
connection.
invisible connection
Yeah.
to her as
Mm.
well. Um, though moving there, I didn't know that I would still be there
I see.
so many years later. But here I am.
Yeah. When did you move to France, and how was your experience moving to France? Did you basically have that feeling this is the town for me, or did you face cultural challenges and other challenges? What was the case? Mm.
So I would say that it was in some ways more challenging than moving to Denmark alone, which is counterintuitive because I was there, I had a boyfriend, and I kind of
Mm.
was invited into kind of his world a bit. And we were there, we were actually living with his mother for the first few months before we found a place of our own.
Mm.
Which, I think it can be challenging. I feel like I was trying to learn how to do things correctly. Whereas now I
In a
don't worry
French
so
way?
much in a French way, right? Which is the right way, which is not, I mean, no, it's something that's like, it can feel like if you do something a little bit outside of I mean, there's so many fields where like cultural fields, or I don't know, things have been studied, and it's like, this is the best way to
Mm.
do all these things. And Um, I mean, maybe so, but there's a lot of pressure, and yeah, it was challenging. And yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like as an American, there is the American part on you, and wanting to be
Yeah.
a French, you will never be a French 100%. There will be always be a little American in you. However, you have to find the ways, like um, many immigrants did before and they are doing now. You have to find a way to adapt to the new
Yeah.
circumstances, and it's often it can be a little bit challenging because you live in certain ways, in American ways, and you have that belief is the way to live, and you go to another place, you figure out, well, there is a thing you have to shape to fit in, you know. So, in can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about Paris, the city of Paris? In Chicago, you have the downtown area, and you have the small neighborhoods that are very unique on their own ways. When you come
Hmm.
to Paris, how can you describe the geographic of Paris and how the geographic reflect the culture? You
Mm.
know.
So Paris is it's a much more compact and dense city. And I would say that neighborhoods also have very much, yeah, their own universe. So there are 20 arrondissements, so 20
Arrondissement.
official neighborhoods in the city. And I've lived in quite a few different arrondissements over the years. I currently am living in the 20th.
Okay.
Um, but I've lived in the 18th and the 9th and the 13th and the 5th. And yeah, I've gotten attached to all of the neighborhoods where I've lived for different reasons. Um, and I guess you also have the left and the right bank in Paris. So the right bank is overall, it's divided by the Seine. So the Seine, which is the river that goes through the city, that curves down a little bit. And so the right bank is basically the north of Paris, but it kind of scoops around. It sort of follows the Seine. And the left bank is more of the south. There's also kind of an east-west division in the city. Again, the West is traditionally a bit more wealthy and a bit more right wing, and the East is a bit more left wing. All of Paris is somewhat wealthy, I would say, as a whole, but that's
Mhm.
still kind of typically, yeah, there is a kind of
The
politically,
dynamic.
it's a little more, um, which is, again, that's not 100% the case, but there were just elections in Paris. There were just municipal elections that I'm able to vote in now. I'm a dual citizen
I
now.
see.
So it's the first time voting in municipal elections, but you can actually see kind of the breakdown of like they're voting for the new mayor of Paris. And there was a right wing candidate who's like the part of the Ministry of Culture, people are worried about her getting in. I mean, worried if you're on the left. But the left wing candidate, the socialist candidate, ended up winning. But you could kind of see the breakdown of like the arrondissements is like the red and the blue states. You can kind of see the breakdown of
In a
Paris.
same city. It's
Yeah, in the same city,
okay.
absolutely. Which I mean, I would say overall Paris is more kind of more socialist, more left leaning,
Mm.
but there is a division within this city. Um, and I mean, in terms of the culture, I mean, it's culturally also so rich and dense in terms of like the past, which is visible in monuments. I mean, I'm a stained glass artist in terms of like visiting cathedrals and like being um, part of that history. I mean, there's just so many incredible things that are there that you can just sort of walk into. Buildings, I mean, there's so many beautiful buildings that, go back centuries and centuries. And I would say that I mean, there's also, in terms of art that's happening today, there are a lot of art centers. I would say that there are more things in terms of like art that's like new art. There's a little more happening in like outside of the périphérique, so the edge of the city, like in some of the suburbs, um, because Paris itself is pretty expensive,
Mm.
and there's just like there are more like artist communities that are a little bit more in the suburbs, I would say, to some degree. Um, like in like the north suburbs, there are a lot of like kind of art centers or like artist spaces. And my own studio is in the suburb as well. I do live in the city, but my studio is in a southern, sort of a southeastern or south central suburb.
I see.
And yeah, I guess culturally, I mean, there's so much happening on a daily basis, so many museums that, and exhibitions and readings. And I mean, yeah, there's no shortage of things to do. And it's easier to access, I would say, because of, I mean, Chicago has the L, which I love, and Paris has the metro. And I guess I have to adjust when I go back to Chicago because the metro is like Paris is more compact and it's just easier to get to from one end to the city to the other. In Chicago, it's just much more spread out. And I would say that in Paris, it's just easy to walk places and you can get anywhere, like to anything that's happening. Whereas I feel like in a lot of American cities and, you know, larger cities than that, it's just it can take more of an effort to like go to one thing that's happening on in another part of the city. Whereas in Paris, it's like you can also go to there are different gallery districts. So you could go out on Thursday nights and like hit a bunch of different spaces, different galleries that are in, either in the Marais or in Saint-Germain-des-Prés. So yeah, different neighborhood. I mean, there's so many different cultural worlds
Mm,
intertwining and the past and the present mixed. Um, but there is still like they love the past
I see.
here, and there's a
So,
lot of there's a lot of protection of like monuments and things that are historical, and I think that's a great thing. But there can be a kind of I think there's a little more fear about trying new things or like even in creative spaces to like to be in between two boxes. I mean, which is basically my case. I mean, I work in stained glass, but I would say I'm more of an artist than a crafts person, even though I am both. Um, I'm a I'm a visual artist and I'm a poet. And I think that like the space between those worlds is sometimes the richest. But I think that here there is I don't know, there is a tendency to like categorize things or that
I see.
it's less common to be this and that, or if you're between worlds, you may not be
Yeah.
taken as seriously or can, and I feel like there's a different kind of pressure for that here. But at the same time, it also can make it feel meaningful because it's going against what is common, and that may make some
Yeah.
doors close, but then it can kind of open up others and like open up curiosity,
Yeah. I
for
had
other
that.
people.
I had that question in mind because
Okay.
I was saying often people are viewed as a poet or they are viewed as a writer or they are viewed as an artist. But when you come to your case, you view yourself as an artist and a poet. And looking at your work, and you are doing both. You are reading poetry, but in the same time, allowing the artistic work to flow behind you.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
in some ways, you did, you brought up that issue. However, but in France, you decided you want to go back to school. Did you, if I'm not mistaken, how was the process of going back to school? Why um, you see the need of going back to
Mm.
school? Mm,
Well, I I think that some of that really was because of moving here specifically. Um, when I moved to Denmark, I was amazed that people gave me a chance to like, oh, okay, you don't, they're like, okay, you want to, yeah. I feel like there was just more of that in Copenhagen. When I moved to Paris, I tried to get work at framing shops, and I'd already worked, I'd worked probably like a year and a half in frame making, which, I had some experience in Denmark and also in Chicago before I moved to France. And to my surprise, people didn't really respond to kind of cold calling that. Um, they wanted you to have a degree in frame making,
I see.
which I mean, fair enough. I think you can do things that are quite complex as well, and it's something you can develop, and it can be a real métier d'art. Um, but I think I learned that in Paris. The default job, which I mean, some people really want to pursue, is probably teaching English, and there are positions and there's a need and there's kind of or like nannying, or speaking English with children. Like as an English speaker, as a native English speaker, there's work in that arena, even if you don't have formal training in that sometimes you'll be hired just to teach English, or you can go and get more certificates for that. And I also saw that a lot of expats were choosing that path, regardless of their background. Again, not everyone, um, and I wasn't against that, but I decided that getting a degree in something that was closer to my art is what I wanted to
Your
try,
your
to
calling.
open up
Mm.
those doors.
Yeah, your
Exactly.
I see.
My calling, yeah, the
Mm.
calling yeah. And um, at the time when I first started learning stained glass, I mean, it felt creative, but it was also, I was still really learning how to do it. And in some ways, it felt like a kind of interesting compromise between being an artist and kind of mastering something technically. And initially, I wasn't even sure that that would become the medium that would be my main medium as an artist. But it was like, okay, this is an interesting profession. Maybe this is what I want to pursue. And I got into a program, which I was really lucky to get into. It was a pretty selective program. I think they only accept about 6 students. And I applied on a long shot, and I think I was waitlisted, and then I got in. I know I had a profile that was atypical, and I thought the interview went terribly, all of it, but I was waitlisted, and then I got in, and I
Okay.
was like, okay, well, I guess I better do it.
Mm. What was the name of the
And
school and the
so the
program?
school was called Olivier de Serres, or it has a long name, École nationale supérieure des arts appliqués et des métiers d'art, or
Okay.
NSAMA. It's like an acronym. So it's one of, excuse me, it's one of the what is called les grandes écoles des métiers d'art. So one of like
Okay.
the main applied arts schools. So um, fairly, yeah, I mean, fairly prestigious, and um, but it's also one of, it's not like there's like Les Gobelins, Les Boules. Those are some of the school, like applied arts schools that are maybe more famous. But this is the one that had a stained glass program.
I see.
And yeah,
Did you see any difference between how the educational system in America approach artistic work and the educational system in France? Do they have a main difference on how they approach the art work and education?
definitely.
Mm.
There is definitely some major differences. Again, I went to a liberal arts college and not an art school in the States.
Mm.
So I know that was also, I mean, that's a different experience as well. So I never went to an art school in the US. So I can't speak to that experience. But in France, I would say hmm, it was a weird, interesting mixture. I felt, in some ways, I felt like I was. Hmm, there was, yeah, there tends to be more like negative critique. I think in the US, I mean, you can receive, especially like thinking about art classes that I was taking in college. I mean, teachers, or you can receive negative feedback, but it's usually balanced, and usually the overall emphasis is more encouragement than not. And I feel like that is very American and Anglophone more so.
Mm.
In France, I feel like they kind of like try and
Hit your heart.
they try to like they kind of to try and break you, and then they kind of rebuild you.
I see.
Um I yeah, and I also like there's the grading system is different. You get graded out of 20.
Mm,
And I just like translating it, and like, and apparently it's really common sometimes, like initially, like at the first quarter or the first semester, you get really low grades, and that's like really normal. And then you get better, and it's like standard. It's like, and it's like for me to understand, like, okay, if I'm getting 10 out of 20, is that a C? If I'm like, what is normal? And it's like, it just is,
yeah.
it's to like, yeah, that was not intuitive.
Mm,
Also we took there was some of the classes like there was like there were different like architectural drawing and like different art classes, and then there was like the studio time that was like all stained glass, which was at least 2 full days, maybe more, and then some other art classes like technical drawing and various other things, and then there was also like chemistry, like physics and chemistry related to glass, and art history. And one thing I was surprised that like the other academics were I mean, I really enjoyed like the art history class, but it was in terms of like having already done like a college program, even though this was all in French,
you feel like
it
it's
wasn't that
repetitive? Mm,
well. It was actually, I guess I knew how to look at art and analyze art and create sentences, even though like in it being not my native language was a challenge, but in terms of like some of the thinking, I feel like I had it wasn't it was actually a lot easier. But I think that that was maybe specific to that program. I think probably there are other academic programs where that may not have been the case. But even like the physics and chemistry, I mean, it was challenging at first, but it also felt like once I got the hang of it, like the academic part of that program was manageable. It wasn't too, the challenge was doing it in French. And then it was the focus was more like learning stained glass, and the other topics were kind of more manageable.
if I understand your story, you decided to go back to school to earn a diploma so you can have more opportunities when you come to job. After your diploma, that after finishing and obtaining, do you think um, the education and the diploma open more opportunities for you, or it was not the case?
It's a good question. At the end of the program, I started to feel like stained glass was really like it felt more like painting. It was a creative medium that I wanted to explore as an artist, and I was less interested in like restoration of stained glass windows. In the program, it's like you're like copying medieval windows, and then you have like more creative projects. And some people go into like restoration. There are probably people who've gone through this program that have worked on Notre Dame and other, that's it's more about preserving the stained glass that exists. And I realized that I wanted to work with the medium as an artist. So I think that affected some of the choices I made afterwards. Um, I chose not to look for work in a stained glass studio, which maybe I should have done or could have done. I'm sure that wouldn't have been a bad thing, but instead, I had a chance. I got a scholarship to go to Scotland for 4 months, and this was like through the program. I ended up working for an organization that archives stained glass. So I wasn't in the studio, but I was in an English speaking space, um, like working in the archives of stained glass for several months. And that's also where I started like writing poetry again, which is a whole different, this is not your question, but that's sort of when the poetry came in,
Mm.
and that suddenly became really important. And also being again in an English speaking country, there are things I wanted to express, and I didn't realize how much I had missed like the English language and kind of like writing and kind of expressing. And France and like the academic space, I was like really trying, I was like learning how to paint like 13th century drapery. And like I was trying to like fit into a mold of something from the past. And then at some point it started to break. And I was like, I don't really want that to be my professional trajectory. And I kind of understood that at the end of my program that I wasn't going into that. And then coming to Scotland, I started writing poetry. And then when I moved back, it wasn't like, okay, stained glass is like, I'm going to be a stained glass maker, a stained glass crafts person. I'm going to work in a studio. I'm going to do this. I guess I wanted to kind of connect more to the artist. And so in terms of work, I ended up, I ended up doing some English teaching and I looked for a studio. I also got, I mean, various different jobs. I worked like in like some schools, like during recess time, like with kids. I worked at a bakery for 7 months.
I
I
see.
got these like little, I mean, different gig jobs while trying to like go deeper into my art, which again, it was kind of initially I did do the degree to like, okay, this is going to open up professional doors and like, and I was imagining that trajectory. And then something in it didn't feel like the right thing for me. And so instead I pursued a kind of work, different kinds of work that were okay. And then I had time for my art and I was kind of balancing those worlds instead. And then over the years, I mean, yeah, it's shifted many times, like how to make it work, how to make a living as an artist. But in the end, I didn't go like, okay, I'm working in this stained glass studio for these number of years, and then I'm going to eventually open my own. Instead, I kind of just kept making my art, had other jobs, and then I started teaching workshops in stained glass. And little by little, like all of my work is really connected to stained glass. I do a lot of teaching today now, both in my own studio and at another studio in Paris, Paris Atelier. It's a program that's partly subsidized by the city. So they used to pay 60%, but then budget's been cut, so they pay 40%, and then people pay on a sliding scale based on their income. So it's a very socialist program it's cool that's um, so I teach stained glass workshops to them once a week, and then I offer workshops in my own studio like about once a week as well.
Is-
And
Um,
and then yeah.
mm. It looked like your trip to Scotland did have a lot of impact on triggering your desire of writing poetry. What um, what makes Scotland so significant, and what inspire you in that country to write? Is it the sceneries, the geographic, or the people, or the culture that
Mhm.
trigger a desire to write poems? What was it?
Good question. I mean, I think it's a very beautiful country. So is France. I
Mm,
mean, um, I think, I mean, I met some really, really wonderful people when I was there. Um, I mean, I think all of that had an influence. I think it was also there's this shift from like moving into like an English language country, even though it wasn't America, wasn't the USA, but being able to speak in English and to kind of express myself with a different level of nuance
mm,
was refreshing. And also, I was alone there, where I had been living with my partner in France, and things were in a rocky place in our relationship as well. And so I was suddenly alone in Scotland for 4 months. And it also gave me a chance to really like reflect on what I was living and feeling kind of on my own again. And so I think it was a space, it was a time it was both the time to meet different people and kind of interact with different spaces. And it was like a very introspective time and thinking about, okay, where am I at and where am I going next? And I think I, without intending to, even though writing, is something that's been, part of my life in different ways since I was quite young, like writing poetry became important to me to kind of just process where I was at that moment in time. And Scotland is where it happened. And Scotland is, I mean, yeah, it's definitely in my heart, and there's a lot of magic in the place. But it's both. It's probably just like the interaction of what that country and that space is, and what I just happen to be living in my own life, and just what that opened up.
Despite the artistic, the journey, the challenges of artistic journey, I have the impression you were able to find your way, and the way was to be a stained glass artist and a poet. And
Mm,
today, you are teaching your art, and you are working on your art. And behind you, I see one of this is one of your work, right? If
it
I'm not
is,
mistaken.
yeah.
You don't mind
Hmm.
just sharing few of your work, because when I went to social media, I was very fascinated with your work. You don't mind sharing and taking us through it, through your works, mm, so
No, I
people
don't
can have a
mind.
understanding
Yeah.
what your work is about. Mm,
I'm happy to. And yeah,
mm. Okay.
you mentioned wanting to look at some pieces. So I have
Yeah.
a a slideshow
Mm,
I can pull up if that's
mm.
let's see if I can do that. Okay, wait a second. Oops.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Point.
okay.
Yes.
I think that's wait 1 second. Okay, are we good?
Yes. Mm.
Okay, continue to share.
Yep.
Can you see?
Alison
Okay.
Grace Koehler, stained glass poet.
That's right. So I
where
like
where were-
this is the
where were, was it? When did you have this presentation?
Oh, the one that I'm well, so I actually just put this together. I mean, this is going to be a mix of things.
Okay.
But I just put it together for the interviews. I
Oh,
just
thank
pulled
you.
some things up. So this is just exclusive. I mean, I've done some presentations for other
Mm.
spaces before, but this one I just put together for today. So
All right. Thank you, mm,
yeah, for today, no,
for
there's no date on
sharing.
it, but this well, my pleasure.
Mm.
Um,
Can you take us
okay.
through the work?
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. So I guess on the left, there is I guess it depends how if the screen is flipped or not, but there's a detail of a window that I made in a private commission piece, and then the other one, don't know if you can see me, but I'm on stage
Yeah.
doing a performance.
Mm.
So I'll talk to you a little bit about both.
Okay.
So yeah, let's see. I can wait a second. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So here's a window that I did in Mulhouse. It's in France. I wanted to show this image because it's a private commission that integrates poetry into the window. So I made this piece for a friend who's a poet, and she gave me some of her own poems as a starting point. And I actually integrated some of her own text into the window.
Oh,
And I did I drew out some designs. So when I have a commission piece, I'll usually do some small scale drawings,
like a
but
preview.
drawings that
Mm.
maybe exactly,
Okay.
but that drawings that sometimes like at stained glass window, you draw every single line, and like it's the design is like the exact like small scale version of what the large piece will be, whereas mine are more like you see like the blues and the greens. You kind of have it's a little bit more impressionistic, but you have an idea of like the colors and like the main structural elements, but there's still space to kind of discover the piece as I'm making it. And I was lucky to work with her. I mean, clients are always different, and sometimes they're comfortable giving a lot of freedom
Mm.
to the person who's making the piece of art. Sometimes they really want to see the process like at each step. And she was
Okay.
like, she validated the design. She's like, okay, I don't want to see anything. Just when it's done, come to Maluz and install it. And so I had a
Okay.
lot of freedom, and that was a cool project from a few years ago. Um, so this one is a window that I did in
De la
Paris.
Ville
So
Cafe. Mm.
Yes, De La Ville Cafe. So you can visit it if you're ever in Paris.
Oh, okay.
It's to the back of the restaurant. It's actually so built in 1860, and actually it's a kind of amazing space that has some designs from like some of the decor from the 19th century is still there, and other things have been renovated. And oops,
Mm.
sorry about that.
It's okay. Mm.
These I don't know if other people do that with their earbuds, but mine fall out sometimes.
Mm.
So the windows on the outside are not my own. They my guess is that they are not from the 1860s. They kind of have a bit of an Art Deco, Art Nouveau-ish look, but they were already there, and the panels in the middle were empty.
I
And
see.
so they accepted my original designs for the work on the inside. I wanted it to kind of integrate some elements of what was on the outside, but that it would be kind of its own work. I did some of the restoration on the outer windows. So I cleaned it and I replaced some of the glass that had broken and reinstalled those windows. And then I made the three new pieces in the middle.
Mm.
Um,
So if somebody go to Paris at this restaurant, the person will be able to see that window.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's good to know that it's quite a large space, and the windows are like you have to go
Mm.
up the staircase to see the windows. So it's as you go up to like the upper area where the windows are. And it's good to know that it's more visible with the daylight. They installed a lighting system, but at night you see it a little bit, but it's not like fully lit up, which, at some point maybe I'll offer to redo the lighting for them because I think it'd be nice to be able to see the colors more in the evening too, but it's more visible during the day as it is.
Mm. When
So
you
yeah.
are putting things together, do you have a kind of idea in mind, or you just feel it and just put things, or you have to kind of have a drawing and know where to put the red or how to cut it? How the process work?
Um, yeah, good question. So I don't, well, it depends on the project. So if I'm working with a client, I usually will offer different drawings, and again, they're small scale designs of the final piece, but they're not exact replicas. But for this drawing, it's like, okay, I knew that I wanted like that same blue to be integrated like in the center,
Mm.
but in the building itself, like the upper level, so the windows on the staircase, there's a lot of like red velvet, also because the space used to be like a maison de rendezvous, so there's like courtesans and like there's kind of like kind of a belle epoque feel, and so there's like lots of red velvet, and then outside they had a lot of greenery, and so when I was walking through the space, it was like the red and the green were really present. But this window was kind of these pastel colors. And so I was like, I wanted it to have that blue and then these like bursts of red and then the green from the outside that's kind of like connected to the vegetation. And then this sort of like red kind of, yeah, I don't know, something more passionate and
Yeah.
more like what is happening upstairs. So I had all that in mind. And then with the actual making of the window, um, I guess I leave space. Like I have the design, but then there is space for me to kind of change it a little bit and also respond to like the actual shapes of the glass that I may cut, but sometimes I keep them as they are, kind of intact.
Yes.
Um, okay, so the next one is a
Okay.
window that I made for a bookstore in Paris. Unfortunately, they closed during the pandemic. So this is from a while ago, but I wanted to talk about this piece as well because um, I really like working with broken shards, and I find it really beautiful sometimes to work with glass that has been broken in one space, and to use those broken pieces and to create something new with those broken pieces. So at the Berkeley Books, an English language bookstore in Paris. Really wonderful place. Sadly, it doesn't exist anymore, but um, their display case was broken. And I knew the owner, and she asked me if I could make it into a window. And so I actually took all the broken shards and I repainted them and I integrated other pieces and I made it into a new window. And it's also a window that was on the outside of the bookstore. Usually stained glass is on the inside. But for that reason, I wanted it to be visible even without any light shining behind it. So there's not as much color. There's like some fragments of opaque glass and textured glass. And so yeah, there were moments when there was like a little bit of light behind it. And then moments where it was just visible if you walked past down the street. So sadly you can't see that one anymore
Mhm.
if you come to Paris, but it used to be visible on this street. But I was able to take it out just before like the lockdown in Paris, and the bookstore owner still has it, but it's no longer on public
In
view.
display at the bookstore.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
my one question is, um, in our early conversation, you were saying that you were working and there are a lot of residue of glasses, and you kept those glasses and didn't know what to do with it. Uh, in your actual work, do you go around looking for different pieces, or you buy glasses and trying to cut them in pieces? What is the process? Because I feel like going around city looking, traveling for a purpose, it can be an interesting story. Or you
Yeah.
use both methods. What method do you
I
use?
would say I use both.
Okay. Mm.
I do actually collect glass, like from the
Mm.
street. If I see a broken mirror, I mean, a lot of the time it's like broken bottles, broken mirrors.
Can we call you
Um,
the glass hunter?
Sure. Sure. I mean, I actually have friends often like they'll break a wine bottle and they're like, here you go. I'm like, thanks. I mean, it's not always possible to integrate it, especially if it's already like quite curved.
Yeah,
But sometimes like with a slight curve, I can integrate it into a window. It depends, but I do pick up things from the ground. I also take I'm in touch with different glass studios in
I
Paris,
see.
so different
Mm.
stained glass studios. So when you're making a typical stained glass window, oftentimes you can't use like there are pieces that are too small to work with. So
So
I offer to like collect that.
a,
So
a
I'm like
broken
their garbage collector.
a broken bottle of wine or broken glass is not the issue. It remind me a little bit about a Japanese philosophy that say, do you know about that philosophy put in?
It's yeah,
Uh,
the Kinzuki, is that
yeah,
right?
the
Kinzuki.
kintsugi.
Yeah.
Do you apply
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
kintsugi in your work? Mm,
Well, I mean, so I have thought about this
mm,
before, and I think that my process is quite similar. I don't use like gold leaf, but I
mm.
actually wrap each piece of glass. And there's a later slide I'll show you. So you'll see my process a little bit more. But
Okay.
each piece of glass is wrapped in copper. And then afterwards, it's soldered with tin. So in the end, it's either silver or it can be like you can, like this has like a black patina, can add other patinas like a copper patina as well to change the the color of the metal at the end. But yeah, it's similar. I mean, I yeah, sometimes though I'll like collect broken glass from lots of different places.
Mm,
I guess that's the most common. And then I'll reassemble them. It's more rare to have a project like this one, but I have had other projects where I've collected glass from one space. I've gone back to the studio. I've made something with that, and then reinstalled it. So I have actually, and I really like doing that because there is a kind of holistic, yeah. I mean, I think there's like the poetry of that is also very strong.
mm.
But not some projects like the one behind me. I have my boxes of colored glass that I've collected from different studios. And again, sometimes I will buy glass, but for the most part, I do work with glass I've collected. and I have like boxes with like they're color coded. So I have my blue glass, my green, and the and so I'll like use that. I'll take those out, and when I'm making the composition.
I see.
Um, and okay, here. So the next one is
Oh, wow.
a window I made in in a private home not far from Paris. Another interesting project that I installed about a year ago.
Arbre,
Um,
Arbre de Famille
yeah,
installation.
so like a family tree.
Oh, wow.
So the idea is like there are different painted portraits of like the family members, and I worked with I guess a like an iron worker or like
Mm,
ferronnier in French, and he made like the frame that holds the stained glass piece without any silicone or mastic. And the idea is that it's a piece that will grow over time. And so I made the first part. Actually, I made a smaller piece that was hanging in the window of their home. Then they moved to a new space. And then this ironworker made a frame that I helped design to hold it. And it's just held, it's like hugging the window. And like the spaces that are empty, the idea is that eventually I will make other windows with like as their daughter gets older, like I'll do another painted portrait and then it'll grow over time like a
I
tree.
see. So how do you put the pictures into the glass? Do you, is a
So
collage?
it's painted. So I paint it onto
Oh,
the
you paint,
glass.
okay. You paint the
So I
pictures.
paint the exactly. So I paint the pictures,
Mhm.
and it's a special kind of paint. In French, it's called grisaille, and it's fired into the glass like for ceramics. So sometimes to get like to create a gradient, it has to be fired several times to like build up like the grayscale
Yeah,
of the piece. So that is, yeah, I really enjoy painting on glass as well. And it's something that, I'm hoping to get a kiln well, in the coming months, which will
I see.
open up that possibility of doing more painting again in my own studio.
Yeah, often the misunderstanding of an artist, when people see a work, they don't reflect on the time you spend on building the work. How long
Mm.
it take you uh, to give birth to this piece? That is an ongoing piece.
Well, I mean, this one actually, as is, took several years, which is not always the case because
I
it's
see.
such a hard question to answer
Mm,
because projects are so different. And sometimes, like even the last one, the Delaville project, it's like their deadline kept shifting, and then I had to retake the measurements for the panel on the top because they changed something in the building. And so that piece I worked on for maybe a year as well. But again, if I had to do it in a couple months, I could have. But it's like this one, I had a small piece that was like an initial commission. Then I grew it to a larger piece, and then it's going to continue to grow over time. And so it's not even complete. So it's already been several years, but it's like there's been space between working. So that's a tricky answer to your question. But like if I have a commission piece, it depends on like do I have a deadline? Um, if I don't, or sometimes the deadline shifts around. Sometimes I choose the deadline. Sometimes someone imposes a deadline. And if, in general, like I like to give about 2 months to make a piece because that also gives me time to like change the composition a little bit if needed. But again, that also depends on the size of the piece, what else is happening, if there are several commissions at once or not. There are a lot of factors, like how much time I can put into one project at a given moment in time, which makes it difficult to answer. But
yeah.
like, that's what I'd say, like, I like to get, that would be, if there's no reason that they need it more quickly. Um, Maybe I would be able to do it more quickly depending, but if not, I like to give myself about 2 months.
Yeah, I think you answered the question because there are different reality, different thing you need to consider. You know,
Yeah.
it's there are because there are different parties in one project. They are the owner, they are the artists, and they are the circumstances around it. But at the end, you will always find the ways to create beautiful pieces like this. Mm,
Oh, thank you.
yeah.
Um,
Oh.
this one is, well, just, yeah, a couple little images from a festival I took part in last summer. You can see a little bit of installations in
Mm,
other spaces. It was, yeah, during a festival at Le Lot. It's a region in France. And actually, we're all American artists in this one space, kind of in a barnyard that was transformed into a contemporary art space.
mm,
And I had these two windows that, for me, they're kind of the past and future windows. And they're examples of work that is freestanding and
mm,
is more sculptural. And that's something I've been interested in doing more of, creating windows, also windows in found frames, um, that sometimes are hung and sometimes become freestanding. But working in found frames was something I became interested in a number of years ago as well. And
well,
then
which
the piece on the, oh
which
yeah.
one is the past and which one is the future, and what make
What we
them the past and the future? Mm,
Phew, yeah, that's a good question. Um, so actually, here this is it's just a little photo that shows the windows quite nicely with their reflections, but they were actually separated. They're like on the entrance to this barn that was actually a contemporary art space as well.
okay,
Um, and actually, the past is the one that's more blue. The
I
future
s-
is the one that's more red.
I see.
Um, why? I mean, well, I actually made these windows when I had to leave my studio. Well, I was in a shared studio space in the 13th arrondissement in Paris.
Mm,
And during that year, it took me a long time to find a new studio. I had a year to find one, and I found a new space at the very end of that year. But it was maybe I had about maybe 2 months or even less
mm,
before I had to move out, and I still didn't have a place to go. And I had these doors, and they were frames that I had found. And I decided, okay, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going to make these doors. It was almost like, I mean, I don't know if it was quite a prayer, but it was like, I don't know where I'm going, so I had to build myself doors, and
okay.
and then kind of, I mean, and then
Which
something.
for the best?
Which for the best, yeah. Exactly. So I made these doors, and then,
Okay.
I met an artist who was like, "Oh, I can rent out part of my space to you." And it kind of like, okay, that was it. That was a solution. It just happened, and
Mm,
it was while I was making these doors. And so
yeah.
this was just I was just exhibiting them at the festival
Yeah. What
last
I'm
summer.
learning through your story is, you know, based on your experience, I feel like you have to trust your feelings, your gut. You have to follow. You just have to be courageous enough to do what you have to do, and let the universe dictate.
Yeah.
Festival Lantidote. Mm,
I yeah, I think
mm,
that is true. And again, I can't say that I'm courageous at all moments either, but then maybe the art is kind of a
yeah.
manifestation of that
Mm,
that courage, those
mm,
moments.
mm.
Sometimes it is. And the other piece was inspired by a poem by a French poet, Liliane Giraudon, called Soleil or Not Soleil. And I made that initially for this platform called Verse of April, where it was kind of like a poem translated into stained glass, which is also something I'm interested in doing, um, translating or interpreting poetry into windows. So that's
Mm.
Soleil or Not Soleil, which Soleil means sun. So sun or
Yeah.
not sun.
Okay.
So they were both in the festival last summer.
Mm.
Um, oh yeah, so this is another project. Last year, I worked with a designer, Juju, who made a perfume
Oh, wow.
by hand, and I made a series of windows for these perfume bottles. And the perfume itself, like these are the ingredients that she put into the perfume, and I kind of like translated those ingredients into different colors. And so I made like little tiny windows, and some of them are actually ends up being too large for the final bottle. And I've actually turned them into some other pieces that are, a couple of them are in Milan right now in an exhibition. But those are a couple images from Fashion Week where we showed that along with her collection from last fall, which
Mhm.
was a new context for me, but that was something recent. So I wanted to share that project as
Yeah.
well. Um, and here, so here you have a little, this is the window that's behind me.
Oh, okay.
So there you go. You can see how it kind of changes with light and
Yeah.
with its absence, and that's part of the magic of stained glass. But to the left, you can see the
The
work in
process.
progress.
Yeah.
So
The
um,
giving of birth of
exactly.
I see. Mm.
So this is the composition that I made for the window behind me, and each piece of glass is wrapped in the copper foil, and then afterwards it is soldered with tin. So this is the piece, like the design is basically fixed, and in that window, there are a couple of photos that a friend found in like a what's like a vide grenier, like an antique market, and there were photos printed on glass, like photo negatives on glass,
Mm.
and I integrated a couple of those into that window for here for my home, or
I
where I
see.
live today.
Mm.
So that is the process.
So
um
how do you call this work?
well, I mean, other than stained glass poetry,
Yeah.
so, I mean, the process, the name of this method or the technique in English is copper foil. In French, they call it the Tiffany technique because it was created by uh, Louis Comfort Tiffany. Um, you've probably, or maybe you've heard of Tiffany lamps. So this is the technique to make these sort of Art Nouveau lampshades. So you can actually build windows in 3 dimensions. And the difference is, normally like for medieval or more classical windows, you use lead came. But for that process, you can't have so many little pieces that are kind of like spread around. It's like you have a design, you cut the glass, you paint the glass if you're going to paint it, and then you assemble it with lead, and then you install it. And um, I mean, maybe I'm going a little bit fast. You also have to draw it out and cut out like the calibre, the design. Then, but
Mm.
in any case, this technique allows me more freedom to like change the composition around and actually discover it in the process of making it. And again,
Mm.
for me, that feels closer to painting. It also feels closer to poetry. But again, painting and poetry can be many different things for different people. But it's a process that allows, like, it's more organic. It allows for more freedom, more improvisation, which is
Mm.
also something I'm interested in on stage as well as in window building.
I see.
Okay, so this is just an example. This is in a residency I did in Lithuania, where
Mm.
you can give you an idea of like some of the performances I do. So I may be on a light table where I'm reciting poetry. Sometimes there's music playing behind me, or there's music live. The window to my right, I think I took out a picture that showed the window itself better, but the window was something I made during the residency, the artist residency there. And the window itself integrated like glass that was produced in Lithuania and enamels that were produced there as well. And I was painting these family photos that, um, like of my mother and grandmother and my great grandmother, because I have Lithuanian heritage. And so being there, I was kind of connecting to that side of my family and making a work that was inspired by that and kind of part of that as well. And that's, yeah, I've been there a number of times. And I also have
Mm.
a project that I'm hoping to complete one day that is more sculptural, that's actually would be in the town where my great grandmother was born,
I
but
see.
still in progress years later.
Yeah.
But it'll happen one day.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, and then this is another, I was actually back in Lithuania last summer for a performance at the Jonas Mikas Visual Arts Center. And this gives an idea of a performance where I'm on, on a light box, and I'm actually being filmed, and that the performance is being projected live, and that's also being mixed. So for this, my partner was doing like the sound and had done some video as well, and there was like video that was integrated into like the live video work, and there was like a sound piece that went with it as well. And yeah, so I guess very, very multimedia. And I'm also reading poetry. Um, so there it is. There's more stained glass poetry kind of live
So
on the stage.
the poem you read, is it connected to naturally connect to the work, or it can be different?
So I perhaps someday I will create a piece that is like maybe more for theater, that could be reproduced in a way that includes improvisation, but that has a structure that doesn't change, and maybe it has text that doesn't change. But currently, I tend to adapt to each new context. So I like to read text that I've never read before. Maybe it'll be mixed in with texts I have. But for this specific performance, there was some text I actually wrote during the trip. Um, and I guess I like that there is a kind of freshness and a rawness to it, and that there was definitely text that was very much about Lithuania, though it was kind of about other things. It could kind of move in and out of a few different places, but it was very much connected to that
I see.
space. And I like to do that as much as possible, or even if it's connected in a way that's not totally obvious. Like I kind of think about, okay, even if I'm working with all text that it's from, because I guess I've published two books now. Like I will sometimes read from my books, and sometimes I'll choose to read poems that are not totally new, but there has to be some connection, and whether or
Mm.
not that's obvious, there's something that kind of has to be some kind of intuitive connection for me.
Mm. Your poem, are they in English, or both English and French?
So all of my poems are in English,
Okay.
even though I've been here for a long time.
Mm.
Um, I would say that the French language influences sometimes like the vocabulary, or it can make its way in. Like French words are sometimes present, but as of now, I haven't written any poetry only in French, which I still, maybe that will change. Maybe I have been doing more text translated, like fragments of text translated into French.
Mm.
I've had some people, I have had a few poems translated by other people into French. Um, I guess I know poets that are completely bilingual that still don't like to translate their own work, and some that do. And it's something that I haven't done and have been hesitant to do. Um, but maybe it's something that will happen one day. I don't know, but yeah, right
Mm.
now, all of my text, all of my
Uh,
poetry is,
in
oops,
English. Mm.
here we go.
Mm.
Oh
Yeah,
dear. All of my text is
in English.
in
Mm.
English.
Okay,
And that's, yeah, I can show you that. So I've got, yeah, this. My first book is Stained Glass Poetry.
I see.
Um, and then my second one was Secret Space.
Oh, sick.
Um, which was also a project in collaboration with a guitarist, an Irish guitarist, and that includes actually an album.
Oh,
So
wow.
so that one has an album, and it's actually this one kind of goes with my last slide.
Mm.
So the stained glass poetry, I also have a spoken word album, which is called Stained Glass Arrangements. And last December, so this very last slide was a performance that happened at the end of last year. In Paris Heretics, they are the publishers of my first book of poetry, and they also produced the album Stained Glass Arrangements, and they were celebrating their 5-year anniversary. And so I made the left is a still from a video that I made. So this
Mm,
kind of gives you an idea of like a performance might look like this. So you can kind of see the glass and my hands moving around. But for this performance, because there are maybe 8 artists, there are a number of artists performing that evening. So I didn't want to do a whole live stained glass set.
mm,
So I was reciting poetry. There was a composition that was made by a composer, a French composer, Vincent Cespedes, who made the sound for this performance. And that's still from the video. And yeah, so this was Celebrate Paris Heretics. And this was, yeah, the album that was created after the book. And
I
here,
see.
I'll just show you over
Mm,
here. It has a bit of a special look to it. It's a vinyl, but then each
okay,
one looks like it's a little bit marbleized. It kind of looks like glass.
I see. It look like you bring together different form of art, the music, the poetry, the visual, and the stained glass together. It's like you are not working alone. You are cooperating with other artists as well. Mm,
Definitely. And I
I
would
see.
say even more so like in recent years. And again with music, I mean, I am not a musician myself, but I really
Mm,
loved working with musicians and like again the world of improvisation. I feel like that feels very connected to the work I do with glass, and um, yeah, that is definitely like
mm. Yeah,
in recent years.
this is amazing work. Um, um, my other question will be: as American artists living in France, do you encounter certain challenges you would love to share, and what do you do to overcome those challenges?
As an American artist living in
Yeah.
France, yeah, I mean, I guess it's definitely a challenge, and to be, yeah, forever a foreigner in the country. I mean, a foreigner or not, I, on the one hand, I think it's interesting to have kind of different perspectives, or I can kind of zoom in and out of different situations. And I think it also, like being an American, and having the perspective of a very different kind of social system, um, like it made it easier to take risks in France because there's just sort of like a different baseline of support for artists. And it's like, okay, well,
Mm,
that's already better. Like, why not take the risk of pursuing um, what I feel passionate about? Um, Challenges. I think that there can be barriers to like getting more institutional support for Americans. And also being a writer who writes in English, like even performances, I think it helps that like I have such a visual component to my work that people can connect with it, and then there is like the sonority of the poetry. But if the audience is mostly French, uh, they're probably going to complain about not understanding the text well enough, and they kind of don't. There is it's like, does it make sense to be writing in English, like to working with English text in France? And I think that I know that Paris Heretics really, they started the label to kind of support expat artists, who are facing challenges
mm,
like that. Um, but yeah, I would say those are a few. Like, there's also a lot of bureaucracy, which France is famous for that. I mean, there's bureaucracy everywhere, but like on the one hand, there's a lot of support for artists, but you have to like go through paperwork, and I feel like there are barriers to like getting, yeah, I don't know, making your way into different kinds of like
mm,
galleries or museums, or there's like I guess that's there for everyone, but I think that kind of understanding the system and navigating it is even more confusing when it's not your native language. And just like the amount of paperwork and bureaucracy is just really, it's kind of
yeah.
extreme here. And to like weather that can be hard. And it's definitely helpful to have people native
Yeah,
speakers or people who kind of already know the system to help. But it can be daunting alone.
yeah, there are plus and minuses.
Yeah,
That
definitely.
has a Chicagoan, um, a French American artist. Did you ever entertain the idea of sharing your work in America? And did you reach out to different institutions here?
So I would say that I have thought about it, but it's
Mm,
not something I've really pursued. I've had done little events. I mean, I actually no, I did a residency the summer before last at the Baltic Arts Studio in Chicago.
mm,
And this is actually run by a Lithuanian stained glass artist, and so that was sort of part of that whole network
mm,
that kind of led me to that space. So I did do a performance and an exhibition there a couple of years ago, but it's true that I haven't really pursued more institutional support in the U.S. or I haven't I haven't been strategic or intentional about finding gallery support or other doing that work. I mean, it's something that I am interested in, but it's also something that hasn't just happened, and it's not something that I've actively tried to make happen in a very serious way. But it's still I'm definitely open to it.
I see.
Yeah.
Miss Alison Grace Koehler, um, again, I will say thank you very much for sharing your precious time and sharing your work. I am a fan of the work. Is one
Oh.
of was the reason I decided to invite you. I have many other questions, but due to the time, um, I will perhaps reach out again to talk about your books. I didn't know
Mm,
you write a book, and we can dive more into your poetry because you are not only a stained glass artist, you are a poet, you are a writer.
mm,
And I would
mm,
love also to learn more about the American diaspora living in France. They
mm,
have a lot of stories in the past of American living, American writers, American musician, painters living in France. And it will be a very interesting thing to learn more about your experience living in that country and its culture. My last question um, will be basically what advice do you give to young artists who have the desire to follow their own path but are in sometimes scared of doing so because of the challenges many artists face when you come to living through their art? What advice
mm.
can you give to those artists based on your experience?
Oh, well, I, gosh, I mean, I would say there's not, I think every trajectory is going to be different, of course, with whatever you choose. I mean, I would definitely encourage everyone to hold on to whatever it is to hold on to and to even to keep digging and to try and continue to understand what is it that drives me and inspires me, and that's something that can be it's not something static, and it'll shift and change with you over the years. But if you kind of have that feeling, if you know that there is like a need to create, that is you, that I mean, it is so important to hold on to it, even if there are moments where it's not clear how that'll help you earn a living. There are ways to do it, and I don't know what yours will be. um, it definitely helps to find support from other people who are artists wherever you are. I mean, like, who can kind of commiserate and also offer ideas that move beyond what you might have imagined. um, and certainly community is so valuable, and that can shift and change in different spaces and at different times in life. But that is valuable if you can find other people to like communicate with and to like stay in it. And also, if making art is the thing, I mean, I don't know. I guess to look for ways to like reduce outside work or to like to give yourself the time to create. But again, for some people, I mean, having certain kind of financial stability is also paramount, and everyone has a different situation. And I don't know, everyone has to kind of figure out how to make it work, but it is possible even when you don't have a plan, like it's not mapped out for you, and it's more interesting that way, and there are risks and there's going to be a lot of rejection. Make sure that you're like ready to like, okay, there's always like, that's, I don't think that that ever stops. There's always, and it just, you have to like learn to kind of build up that strength, and also be sad with it and be lost. I mean, I think that there's value in being in being lost and feeling lost, and like
Yeah, it's part
even
of
in a
the
creative.
journey.
Yeah. And
Mm,
that's, I mean, I feel like that's even a better sign than like, okay, no, I know what I'm doing. And like, I mean, it's tricky because you don't want to just be kind of totally just floating around, and who knows. But
mm,
it's like kind of finding an anchor, like, okay, what is my vocation? Like, where do I want to be reaching? What do I want to communicate to the world? What do I want to be? And, I don't know, and community, and accepting all the ups and downs and the rejection. Yeah,
yeah.
and reach out to people that you admire too. You don't know when people will say no.
Again, Miss Alison Grace Koehler, thank you very much for joining me on the Human Rights Tree. I really
Well, it's
appreciate your time, your input, and your knowledge. And it was a great conversation. Mm.
well, thank you so much, Alpha. You asked wonderful questions, and it's been a pleasure for me. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm.